Welcome back again. Ian Hayes, aka Mama G here, creator of Fiercely Fulfilled Feminine, where I empower women through sacred sexuality to become fiercely fulfilled. Now, today's topic is a doozy. It goes deep. And yet, I believe by what I share today, I'm going to help to enlighten you and also help lighten your load and give you better than hope. Okay? So, we're talking about sexual trauma and the core of shame around that, and how we can begin to dismantle that core of shame. I'm going to share with you what I believe, what sexual trauma is, what shame is, how it's different than guilt. I'm going to share how that core of shame, what that means, and how it becomes compounded throughout your life. Why? And I'm going to share obviously the physiological reasons, psychological reasons, and just take it from a whole energetic, holistic approach, which is how I like to do it. I'm also going to share just a little bit of my own experience with a little bit of vulnerability, obviously without the details, so that you deeply understand that I'm here with you, relatable. I get it. I get it, which is why I'm so passionate about sharing what I've discovered and uncovered on my own journey. So with that, I'd like to end with something obviously to offer you some tools or strategies or ways or situations that are really, really important for you to either begin or to continue your own healing on your own journey from sexual trauma. And more importantly, to just start to break down and totally dismantle any shame that you may have around that. So first of all, trauma. First of all, trauma is not um, it's not what happened. It's the impact that it had on you. And this is really important to consider related to trauma. Essentially, something very unpleasant took place, and you could have been physically hurt, psychologically harmed in some way. And that trauma was not processed because you were not emotionally met in the way that you needed to be met in that moment, which is a need, a basic need that humans have. So, for example, for example, let's look at sexual trauma, sexual abuse, sexual molestation, rape. Okay. You were not you might have been in the presence of a caretaker when this happened or not, but you certainly were not in the presence of somebody who was going to offer you the comfort that you needed, and maybe not even following the event because you may have been uncomfortable sharing that. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. So, it's not been what this is what happens when your body is not able to process because you're not being emotionally met when you need to be. What happens is there's literally a part of the nervous system which will shut down. It'll become blocked. You will no longer have access to that part. It's like you get a little dense ball of energy, and that keeps the nervous system from burning down, literally. So it actually is a survival mechanism put in place by the body. The problem is when that trauma response or that trauma is not fully processed, then emotions connected to that traumatic event or the trauma related to the event become trapped in the body. Literally, that's the dense energy. And over time, it can create all kinds of illness, mental illness, physical disease in general, negative thoughts, depression, self-destructive behavior, all kinds of unpleasant effects. Okay, so we're looking at the echoes of the trauma, the symptoms of the trauma. Okay, so shame. Okay, so we have shame and we have guilt. So shame is an emotion, and depending on what school of thought who you're listening to, guilt is also an emotion. I know that Pia Mellody, who talks a lot about codependency as a dis-ease, um, identifies guilt as an emotion. For me, guilt can be both an emotion and a feeling and a sensation in the body. Because every single emotion will have an equal and matching sensation in the body. So let me explain the difference. Okay, because there are literally 8 basic emotions from what I understand. Shame being the one with the lowest vibrational frequency, by the way. So that's why it's really important we address this core of shame. So guilt is essentially you have a standard of values that you align to. Okay. And if you break literally one of your own rules, you kind of like you feel guilty about it. You might and you tend to feel guilt in your gut. Guilt, G for guilt, G for gut. You tend to feel it's like that uncomfortable, uneasy feeling in your gut because you said or you did something and it's just not how you believe you should operate. Okay. And I can't think of an example right now, so forgive me for that one. And shame, on the other hand, is more about embarrassment and humiliation because it's in front of you. You've done something or been in part of something that you perceive as wrong, and others have been witness to that. So you feel embarrassed and you feel humiliated. So, for example, if you were to trip and fall in the house by yourself, as long as you don't get hurt, you're not, well, you wouldn't even feel guilty. That's not a good example. Forgive me. I just can't think of one right now. At any rate, guilt is essentially based on your own value system and your own standards and your own rules, whereas shame is literally humiliation and embarrassment because others are witnessing something that you perceive as wrong. I'm repeating that because I believe it's very, very important. Now, with sexual abuse, sexual trauma, here, okay, sex is a big aspect of it. I'm gonna do some more videos on why it's such a serious trauma and what sexual energy has to do with that and why sexual energy is so important for us. But I digress. Okay. So we've identified the trauma, what trauma is. We've identified the difference between shame and guilt. Let's talk about sexual trauma. Sexual trauma is when somebody has touched you in a sexual way that is not consensual, that is not deemed appropriate, that is, it could be an incestuous situation when somebody talks to you in a way that is sexual, that makes you uncomfortable, when somebody looks at you in a sexual way, when somebody makes comments to you that are of a sexual nature, which are crossing boundaries. It's also, believe it, and a lot of people don't realize this, but you can actually, for example, watch a parent getting raped or somebody getting raped, and it's as if it happened to you. So, in a sense, there is a level of trauma there, and we could even identify that as sexual trauma. If you were exposed and witnessing others engaging in violent sexual aggressive acts, that is sexual trauma. Okay, if you're not protected from this, that is sexual trauma. So there doesn't have to actually be any physical touching in order for sexual trauma to occur. Let's not diminish the trauma because that's what many tend to do is they diminish it. Oh, well, I was only raped once, or I was only touched once, or, I was never touched. I was just shamed and I was just talked to in a real sexual way that made me extremely uncomfortable. Let's not diminish that. Trauma is trauma. It's an unpleasant situation. There's an emotions that become attached to that. And if you are not met, like I said, emotionally in a way that you need to be met in that moment, if for some reason there's a parent and you don't feel comfortable talking to them about what's going on, or perhaps it is a parent that's talking to you in that, or has talked to you in that way, and who do you go to? So that situation doesn't get processed. It becomes trauma. It becomes emotions that are trapped in the body. And the presiding emotion is the overriding emotion is typically shame. It could be fear, anger, sadness, pain, shame. Shame. Okay, shame because first of all, it's of a sexual nature. And this is where we get to the compounded effect. Because especially in US society, but in society in general, overall, there seems to be such a taboo around sex. Sex is bad. Okay. Now, I personally believe that there's an inversion to everything. I believe it's all about the intention. And, for example, out of Hollywood, is sex being used to pull people deeper into lust and expressing, and lust is not a bad thing, by the way. I don't believe lust is a bad thing. But if lust is expressed in a way that crosses others' boundaries or causes you to not really have firm boundaries for yourself related to lust, then it's a problem. Then it's a problem. It's about intention. There's a lot of it's very multi-layered, so I'm not going to go into that right now. Yet sex in general is considered taboo. Who, has open conversations about sex with their parents? Not very many people, maybe not even with your friends. Okay, there may be some like jokes or whatnot, but who has genuinely open conversations about sex? Healthy conversations about sex. So there's that compounded shame. And on top of this is where it continues to get compounded is, oh my goodness, especially as a child, is wow, I contributed to this in some way. I must have like, why? What did I do? Right? Because a child doesn't have the ability to think with the conscious awareness to say, okay, I'm not responsible for this. Now remember, I shared in another video that a child is completely dependent on their caretakers. And so they're going to, in other words, the child is going to want to say no. Perhaps it's an ongoing incestuous situation, sexual abuse, molestation, okay, like it was for me. Like you want to say no, but you don't. Why do you acquiesce? Part of the reason is because you depend on this person. And if you don't say yes, are you going to have your needs met? Are you going to be abandoned? Your survival depends on this caretaker. So you say yes, even when you want to say no. And then if you're like me, and this is very common too, because it does physically feel good to be touched sexually, you may actually enjoy some aspect of it. So there's some confusion there. Like I know this is something about this is just not right. I know it's not right, and yet I like it. I don't want it. I do want it. So there's really a multi-layered and multi-dimensional aspect to all of that. And then there's this shame about it. Oh my God, I'm thinking about this person who is abusing me and in my instance, torturing me, creating tremendous fear in me, hurting me. And I'm thinking about this person that, seriously, that just compounds the shame. And I know I'm not the only one. This is very, very common. And yet many people don't talk about it. They don't talk about it. So we have that. I'm going to look at my notes to make sure I don't. Oh, carried shame. Carried shame. So we have our own shame. Okay, that's bad enough. Okay, then we have the compounded shame. But then we have the carried shame of the abuser or the aggressor. You see, if somebody is sexually abusing you, torturing you, if you're being raped, they have become numb to their pain. It is about control. It is about power more than anything. Okay? They have become numb to their own pain. They're projecting their pain and their shame onto you. You are taking it on unconsciously. Compounded shame, shame upon shame. And you can see how that core of shame just continues to grow and literally weigh you down. And that's why the self-destructive habits come in, the self-punishment comes in, the shame, the lack of self-esteem, the lack of the ability to be able to maintain healthy boundaries, the inability to have healthy relationships, that toxic relationship cycle that many talk about is due to the trauma and due to that deep level of shame. Okay. So the other thing is you become confused about what love really is and what sex really is and what the function and purpose is of sex. Because while this feels good, but then it feels wrong. So should I want to have sexual feelings towards others, which is a very basic natural human instinct? And so there's a lot of confusion around, okay, if somebody, like for me, for example, in one particular relationship, I was like, okay, if this person doesn't want to have sex with me tonight, I must not be loved. There must be something wrong with me. I'm not good enough. You see where that those thoughts can come in, because with the initial trauma, with the ongoing trauma, you began to tell yourself these things, receive these messages were that the only way that you could get love or attention was being hurt, or that sex was bad, or that sex hurt and sex was painful and it wasn't fun and it wasn't pleasurable. And yet at the same time, sex is a way that somebody showed you that they loved you, that you meant something, that you mattered, that you weren't going to be abandoned. That's the real to the deal. And I'm sharing this from personal experience as well as research, scientific research, observation, clinical studies, but most importantly, from my own personal experience and from talking about and sharing others sharing their experiences with me. Like I said, we're getting real to the real to the real today. People don't talk about it. They make it very impersonal. I'm not giving you details. I'm just being real to the real to the real. That's who I am. Okay. So here's the other thing. Somehow you get the message either like explicitly or on some other level that you've got to keep this a secret. You've got to keep this a secret. I have someone very close to me, and it caused me great pain at the time, who was drug and raped. And they didn't feel comfortable coming to me. And I had to find out under QHHT hypnosis what had happened. Twice this happened to someone very close to me. Caused me, because that's another, I could do another video on that, on the generational cycle and how that, and epigenetics and how that shows up, even if you have a loving present parent. Oh, I might have given it away. Anyways, where was I? The secrecy. Sex is taboo. We can't talk about it because of the shame. Okay. It's also the fear of retribution. Oh my goodness. If I tell on this person, they're going to come back and they're going to hurt me. They're going to really hurt me. And I could be physically, not only physically harmed, but even like, let's talk about death. Okay. I know many people, including myself, I felt like if I said anything, I could die. It was not safe for me to speak up. And so I kept it a secret for a very long time. And many people do. It's the shame around it. It's the fear around it. And the problem is you're suffering in silence. You're holding on to this. And part of healing is being able to talk about it. So that just adds more into the heaviness of it. Don't worry, we're going to get lighter. I'm sharing all this because I'm hoping that it enlightens you. If not, at least validates you. At least it validates you. Here's the deal. And this is the part of beyond the secrets. I'm going to share two other particular elements regarding to why this core of shame becomes so big. The first one relates to secrecy again. So what often happens is perhaps after years and years and years, somebody may actually become an older teenager, a young adult, and they're just breaking down so much. And they finally decide they're going to share what happened with somebody who they believe they trust. Either it's a caretaker or a close family member or somebody that they know hopefully is going to meet them where they know they haven't yet been met. And yet the often very common response when a parent finds out what has happened to a child and involves especially another close relative, there is denial. Not only denial, but there is shame that is projected onto the child who is now an older teen or an adult who is sharing this secret, and there's disbelief. No, can't be. Stop talking that way. No. So just imagine the one moment when you finally feel like you can open up and share something, and you want to be met there, you want to be nurtured, you want to be taken care of, you're ready to begin that healing process, and it's shut down. I'm with you. I got you on that one, okay? Here's another really interesting caveat when we talk about shame is that, believe it or not, there is programming that happens. So you remember I talked about the nervous system, it's not completely processed the trauma. And so the part of that nervous system shuts down. You have trapped emotions, the body becomes more and more dense. But also, we could talk about the fight, flight response. I'm not going to go into that right now. Increased levels of stress hormones and whatnot. You have neural pathways in your brain that connect your behavior and actions. Okay, your ability to gauge a situation and say, no, this is not okay. Okay, yes, this is good to go. However, that judgment becomes impaired when you have been traumatized. So you actually have neural pathways, okay, and you get the more you like, it's kind of like if you take the same route, or like let's look at a trail. Like, let's say you're hiking, right? If everybody's taking the same trail, that's going to be a worn path, and it's going to be really easy for people to move along that trail. In order to create a new trail, it's going to require a little bit of effort, right? And eventually that other trail will like kind of become overgrown, atrophied in a sense. So that's the same thing with your neural pathways. These are like little highways, little pathways, and these are messages and signals that are being sent to your body and guiding you as to how to respond or to react in a situation, right? Well, if you've been sexually traumatized and the messages that you got was, okay, if there's anything similar to this situation, I'm not safe. I'm not safe. You could even have someone who looks a little bit like the person who abused you or raped you, whatever it is, and you're on alert. Even though it's just a person walking down the street, but because they might just look like that person, you are triggered. Your body goes into alert, and you've got that all of a sudden, there's those pathways. Okay, this is not safe. I'm not safe. I've got to cross the street. I've got to increase my blood flow. I got to stress response because I might need to run away. I might need to fight. I'm fearful. Okay, or you might freeze. And then you develop these deep, deep grooves. Okay, and you're going to automatically respond. It's almost like it's not an addiction. It's different than addiction, but you develop this response system that becomes automatic, and it's a protective mechanism for the body. So there is a brain mind body connection. So let's say, for example, I don't know, you're at a bar, and a guy or a woman approaches you, and you're like, and they're kind of, they're getting a little bit in your space, and you're not 100% comfortable, and yet you acquiesce. You end up, like, it's probably not a good idea to go home with this person. I don't know this person. They don't strike me as somebody who's like, kind of up and up, and yet you do it anyways. And you risk the chance of, if I change my mind, are they going to rape me? And that's happened to me. So you kind of, you behave in ways, it's like you want to say, here's that, it comes back around. You want to say no, yet you say yes. It's not because you're weak. It's not because you don't have any moral standards. It's because there's literally a neural pathway that says, if you don't do this, there's anger involved, you could get hurt, and you could even die. So that tends to override what could be the danger of going home with this person to an unfamiliar place. It sounds completely illogical on the outside with someone else looking in, and yet understanding the function, the psychology, and the neurology of it all, and the way trauma functions, it makes perfect sense. And that's why it's so important first to understand it, and then to start to begin to discover tools and ways to heal it, so that those who've been through sexual trauma can feel safe, can feel protected. Because here's the deal. If you don't feel safe and you don't feel protected in the world, you are not going to feel fulfilled. You are not going to be able to have the kind of love and relationships that you desire, the kind of job and career and calling. You are not going to be able to bring in that abundance, especially that financial abundance, because it is all connected. If you have a wall of protection up, you are blocking everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between. And that's why I'm like I said, and I've had it all blocked out for me because it was so important for me to keep myself safe. Okay. Carl Jung, by the way, says that shame is what does it say here? It's a soul-eating emotion. Literally, it's the lowest there is. Okay. So let's see what, oh, okay. Here's the further shame. I didn't share about this. Hypersexuality. Okay. It's very common. And I know some people are triggered by that word. It's very common because you were sexually aroused or you became, I mean, it's normal. I think it's normal to be sexual at a very young age, not necessarily in the way that you might have been because of the abuse or the molestation or the rape, is that it's very common to be overly sexual to the point where that becomes, it just becomes dominant, you know, where you may just masturbate for hours on end and you just, it becomes insatiable. Okay. The other end of it, it can flip flop and go here, there, and back, is completely repressing that desire for sex. And it definitely does interfere with the ability to create intimacy and to really enjoy sex in a way that it can be enjoyed with the intimacy as part of it. Okay. Okay. Because sex, for the sake of sex, when it's hypersexuality, tends to be more like a dopamine hit. Okay. And it's kind of just like, I need to get off because I don't want to feel bad. I want to feel good. And honestly, that's what it becomes. Let's just be real. That's what it becomes. So, okay, where are we? All right. So, yeah, like I said, there's a feedback loop. There are literally not only chemical changes, but physiological changes in the brain as a result of all trauma and especially sexual trauma. Okay. So let's talk about, let's see. Okay, let's talk about now how do we begin to dismantle this shame? Now, remember what I said when the sexual trauma occurred, that trauma wasn't processed because your emotional needs were not met in the way that they needed to be met. Those need to be met. Number one, it is really important to be able to share with somebody you trust that guess what? This happened. This is real. This is what happened to me. You know, and even more so with somebody who is compassionate, has a certain level of training or at least understanding of the functions of sexual trauma, the symptomology related to it, and what might need to happen in order to provide that safe, sacred space for anybody who is disclosing what happened to them. So that is critically important. It's not like you're repeating and going over like again and again the story. You're sharing it just to get it out of your body, pull it out, share it, get it off your chest. That's a really critical first piece to begin to heal. Number two, it's really important that you are provided with a community and an environment that is safe and is sacred. Extremely important, whatever that might look like as a way to continue with the healing process. Another aspect is it's important, you know, a lot of people talk about mindset, mindset, you're going to just reprogram your brain, but guess what? Guess what? We got the body as an instrument. The brain is an instrument. The mind is much greater. The spirit is much greater. And yet we've got to go to the root cause. You cannot control the mind with the mind. I believe you can heal the mind with the mind, but what is the point of entry? The point of entry, I believe, for those who have experienced sexual trauma is through the body. Because the body is on hypervigilance, overwhelmed, completely exhausted and fatigued because of those increased, the stress response never doesn't seem to come, I don't want to say never, doesn't come back to zero. It remains elevated. And the only reason why those cortisol levels might show up on blood tests as lower is because that stress response it becomes elevated and never goes back to zero. Not never, but often does not. And so it's constantly feeling the stress within the body. It's chronic stress, whether one is consciously aware of it or not, that is over time just very fatiguing and very overwhelming. And so it's really important to go through the body. And that's why, for me, somatic healing techniques are really, really important. Okay. Inner child work is very, very important. Tapping into the sensations in the body and the emotions that are associated with the body. Okay. So breathing techniques, anything, yoga, meditation, anything that is going to help to calm the body. There are many, there's actually physical things that you can do to balance and calm the body. Breathing is a big one. Meditation is a big one. Yoga is a big one. Energy healing is a big one because what I have found personally is that when it's so intense and it's just such a sense of overwhelm, literally allowing somebody you trust to, it's like a form of prayer, perhaps it's Reiki or something else, is you're bringing in those divine energies to help to begin to soften and unfreeze the density and trapped emotions in the body, like and being nurtured and held there. It could be through massage. Okay, there's a lot of different ways, and massage is healthy touch. We need to start to desensitize and be okay with healthy touch. Okay. So somatic healing techniques are basically those techniques which have the point of entry of going through the body. You see, because what happens with trauma, and especially sexual trauma, is that we get a lot in our heads. We become disassociated and disconnected from the body. We are anxious. We become distracted. We look to external forces, to distract us, whether it's food or sugar or gambling or sex or drugs or alcohol, escapism, like traveling everywhere, just watching TV for hours on end and scrolling through social media, just constantly distracting, and then just moving really, really fast through life where there's not really a full, deep breath taken in, and there's not really a full exhale. You see, in order to start to come down, you've got to make that exhale longer than the inhale. So there's a tool that I shared right now. Um, so it's important. The felt experience is really, really important. You need to be felt, you need to be heard, you need to be seen, you need to be nurtured, you need to be emotionally met, because that's what's going to cause the emotions to start to release, known as emotional purging. Big fat old cry. It could be burping, it could be cry, it could be vomiting. It could be like a bunch of air coming out your a-hole. Seriously, it can show. That's it. Like it's not gas. It's just extra air in the body that needs to be expelled. That's energy. Okay. Intense vomiting, maybe a little bit of fevers and achiness. That is the body detoxifying and purifying. Okay. And then what you can do is you start to become aware of what are the different belief systems that the messages that I've been given myself. So when you come into that state and you're being honored and you're being held and nurtured and felt and seen and heard, you can relax enough to say, and it likely comes into your awareness. Oh, I got the message that I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy of love. I can't trust anybody. Nobody can meet my needs. I'm the only one. It's not safe to get intimate with somebody. It's not a safe world. I could get hurt. And so then you start to become aware, and then you can start to release those different ways that you can release those. And then you can write out new ones. You can actually write down, well, guess what? I am safe. It is safe to release my emotions and to express my emotions. I am worthy of being loved. I am worthy of, I am loved. I am divinity. I am a creation of God and the one infinite creator. You could write the opposite of the messages that you once told yourself. And over time, you're going to get to deeper and deeper layers. So like I said, there's a lot of different tools. There's acupuncture, there's essential oils, there's flower essences, there's your diet, there's breath work, there's plant medicine, there's psychedelic therapy. There's so many different ways to begin to release those trap emotions that you start to feel better. Now, I personally, I've done a lot. Trust me, I've been at this for 15 years, full throttle. And last year, I went for a week-long retreat, and that's the focus was just on healing. It was just on healing. I also went on an ayahuasca retreat, focus was on healing. Okay, I'm working with an online community, focuses on healing. Working with a one-on-one relationship coach, focuses on healing. Healing me. My relationship with myself is the number one focus. Okay, so you've got to decide what is it that you can do today besides having this information to dismantle that shame so that you can begin to heal more and to start to enjoy your life more and to have not just hope, but faith. See, the opposite of hopelessness is not hope. It is connection. We are pre-programmed, wired for connection. Because when you're connecting and when you're seen and you're felt and you're heard, you feel safe, you feel loved, you feel validated, and allows you to move on. It allows you to move on. So because of my own experiences, I've decided to, it's really important because there's sexual trauma, it goes deeper. It goes a lot deeper. I'm going to share some more that let's just pray I'll be able to stay on YouTube. Let's put it that way. I say it with a smile because it's like, okay, it happened. Okay, let's move on. And so I've been divinely guided to put together a free 5-day masterclass next month. I'm going to start to pop those into the descriptions. Once I have that solidified, I'll share the landing page and to get you to join in. And it's literally moving from shame to self-acceptance, breaking down the chains of sexual trauma. And then from there, of course, there'll be other offers. Of course, if you feel like you'd like some support right now, I do offer one-on-one coaching. I also offer one-on-one sessions. There's no limit. I'm not going to bundle it up for you. You can decide how you'd like to do that. And so if you're interested in that, there's a link in the description that brings you to everything that I do. It's a link tree, so you can connect with me in any of those ways. There's also music that I do, and the music that I share activates healing and transformation. So you can check that out as well. Obviously, my other videos here that I've just started to put up. And I also offer a free 30-minute quantum strategy session. So if you're interested in that, again, go to that one, easy to access, one link to get all of it, to get access. So you have a beautiful day. I do pray that helped. And I feel like, obviously you're good to go. You can end this right here, but I'm going to share a very simple grounding technique just to help to calm the body. And it's a breath, and it is known as the square breath. Okay, I had another name, but I forget. So essentially, it's like a square, right? So you're going to inhale on a 4 count. Okay, that is about intention. You're going to hold that inhale on a 4 count, which is about surrender. Excuse me, no, that was about presence. And then you exhale, that's on a 4 count. That's all on a 4 count. That's about surrender. And then you hold that for a 4 count, and that's about stillness. So we'll do 3 quick rounds right now. So inhale on a 4 count through the nose. There's the intention. Hold on a 4 count. That's presence. Exhale on a 4 count through the mouth. It's kind of like it's just a little bit closed, but it's open. It's not. Okay, and then just remain there, rest. That's stillness on a 4 count. One more, inhale. Exhale. stillness. That's a grounding that helps to bring you back into your body, to get in touch with your body. Right now, if you feel like you need to process something, put on a frequency on Spotify or YouTube, a healing frequency, healing of the heart chakra, of the sacral chakra. I put in a God frequency and just lie there and ask for help. And let those tears come. Okay? And if they don't come, it's okay. They will eventually come. You're safe. I got you. You got you. The divine has you. God has you. Much love. Okay. Catch you in the next video. Peace.